You're listening to the Gilbert King Elisa Show.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. It's 10:30 on the East Coast, United States of America. And this is Gilbert King Elisa. And today I'm going to ask the question, what do you value? What do you value? What do you value? What do you value? Now, these things change over time. I'm not going to stay long on this topic because I have a lot of other things to get to tonight. But I thought this was an important question to continue our series of The Examined Life. And so the question tonight again is, what do you value? Not what someone else thinks you should value, not what you were told to value, but what do you value in your own life if it was all up to you? Because guess what? It is all up to you. So let's get started. And I think the best way to go about this is to ask questions and get to the bottom and get some careful analysis done. Like most things in life, the more questions you ask, the closer you get to not only a solution, but a different way of thinking about something that you've never considered before. With that being said, let's get started. Let's say you value time. And one of those things in your life is you want to get married by the time you're 30. And so the value that you put on your time is also closely attached to what you want to happen in the next few months, the next few years, which is marriage, and you probably want to start a family. Now, this is different from when you're 60 years old and past the time when people usually are beginning to think about starting a family. So as we see over time, the things we value change. A person in their 60s, are they looking for the same thing as a person in their 30s? Do they value commitment the same way that a person in their 30s does? Is a person in their 30s valuing companionship the same way a person in their 60s might? So these are things that we might want to consider when we put value on time and starting a family. Something else you may put value on is money. And like most things, money does not become an important topic usually until you feel that you can run out of it or you don't have enough of it. So, or it could just be something that you believe. You can have a lot of money, but it could just be a belief that you don't have enough. So at what point does it become enough? And is it one of the things that you value? So if you value money, many of the things that you do might not want to revolve around things that you can't charge for or things that you can't, that someone doesn't want to purchase. So if money is something that you value, you might also want to ask, why is it that I value it? Is it just because that's the way I grew up? Or is it something that I was told that's the most important thing in my life? Or is it a worry that is constantly attacking me and I can't think of anything else? And my stress level is always going to be up if I don't have the right amount of money for me to live my life. The next thing you might want to consider as a value that some people, I'm just throwing out things that I've heard people say are things that they value. And this one's a tricky one because when it comes to love, this can go either way. It's almost like asking someone, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite smell? Because everyone has a different idea of what love is, but and how it's supposed to make them feel. But not too many people know exactly what it is to them, and even less people know what it's supposed to, what it means in the person that we are with. So a lot of that is the reason why we never find it. A lot of that is the reason why uh, we feel that it eludes us, because we have to stop and examine and analyze. All right, well, what does it mean for me to be loved? What does it mean for me to accept love? Because that seems to be a hard thing too. What does it mean for my partner to feel love? Is my partner accepting of the love that I'm trying to give them? Because if you feel that you're giving someone love, but the person is not necessarily intaking it, then it might be falling on deaf ears. The person might not appreciate it. And one of the worst things that I think can happen is if you're doing something for someone and you feel you're doing your best for the person to appreciate it and to recognize that they're loved, but the person in reality doesn't really recognize it because that's not the way they grew up, or maybe that's not the way in which they need it, or it could just be the wrong time of year, the the wrong kind of day. The weather might be a little too cloudy, a little too rainy. Don't forget the elements have been proven to affect people's moods drastically and dramatically. So you might want to find out, and just sometimes it just takes a simple question. How do you need to feel love? Or do you recognize the things that I'm doing as something that shows my care or affection towards you? Or is it something that I'm doing that is stopping you from accepting the things that I'm giving? And a lot of those times, there are things that it might be hurtful, but sometimes when you bring it up and you deal with it, you can then begin to see each other in a different way. Another thing that I think is important to ask is um, happiness, because that's also something that a lot of people value. A lot of people value their happiness and how happy they are, how happy they feel, but a lot of people don't know where their happiness will come from or necessarily how that looks like. Now, you might want to ask, when I think of happiness, is it a constant cycle of joyous experiences? Does it go up or down according to the circumstances, the elements, or even your current level of understanding? Is your life your own? Is it guided by what others feel I should be doing? Is it something that I can see as something that I want to build my life around, or something that I can just examine and notice that there's going to be these ups and downs and expect them? And the more I expect them, the more ready I can be for the different balances or disbalances, imbalances in your life. So, with all these things asked, one thing that no one ever asks is, do we ever realize the value of something before we lose it? Or is that when we begin to analyze what we had, what we lost, and if it's ever going to come again? And if it does, in what fashion? And will I then be ready for the challenge, or will I even appreciate it? And so again, that question again is, do we ever realize the value of something before we lose it? Think about that, because your youth is something that most people don't really appreciate until they realize, well, I can't do the same things that I used to. I can't uh, um, your money. You might think that it must, it might be important at one point in your life to value just chasing money, chasing uh, chasing things that will attract more money, be in a position where um, I'm. People look at me as someone who has a lot of money and spending on the latest things to maintain the validation of your circles without knowing that that $1,000 paycheck that you're receiving is something that can eventually stop at any moment, and you might not ever see it again. So do we really value money when we have it, or do we just give it right back because of our own insecurities? Love, even if you define it in the craziest and most abstract ways, is it ever really something that we know how to appreciate when we have it, or give it when it's time to give it? So the question is, are we ever really ready for the things that we say that we need? Knowledge, right? A lot of us want knowledge, but when we have the knowledge, do we actually put it into practice? Do we exercise it so then we become good at it? And for many of us, the answer is no. So it might feel empowering to know that, yes, I am good at this. Yes, I'm good at that, and I know how to do this. But if you're not constantly doing it, do you ever really get good at it? Do you ever really know how to implement it in your own life? Your health. So think about it. Do you ever really appreciate both lungs, both kidneys, your urinary tract, everything working until you actually are not able to use it or something goes wrong? So even under the worst circumstances, people always have hope. But let's say right now, someone who is smoking 24/7, they have 2 working lungs, they have a mouth full of teeth, they have the ability to walk up and down the stairs. Will they ever really appreciate that, as long as they can keep smoking and everything is working fine with their body? Or do they have to lose a lung? Do they have to start breathing through a breathing tube in their neck before they realize, well, this is something that I never saw coming? So again, the question is, do we ever really appreciate something until we actually don't have it? The last thing I want to mention, and I think I've given you enough things to think about, is peace. So you might be having one person in your life, you might be having something good happening in your life within your relationship, but do you still go by that human instinct of still wanting more? And even if you do, is that wrong? Because you have this peace, maybe you have this peace within you that is making your relationship work, but now you're listening to what your friends are saying. You're listening to your gut instinct that says, maybe that girl who winked at me or that boy who winked at me is something I should pursue. So I'm not putting big judgment on that question. I'm just asking you and to realize what's happening inside of you when that's happening. It's usually a feeling that perhaps your youth will run out, and the things that are you have with you now, this is the best you're going to look, and then your looks will suddenly disappear, and you are not going to be settled with the person that you have. Or you can say, well, this is working so well for me, now I want to try something else, because the confidence that I got from this relationship, I might be getting it from that other person, when in reality, it's not going to be the same when you're with someone else, because everybody's love for you will be in a different way. So even peace in another way, even without thinking about relationships as in men and women. If you go someplace, you go to a beach and you realize, well, I like this beach because it's quiet, I could come here with my family, and I can get away from the city for a while. But everybody who goes to the beach decides to, when they get there, turn their volume up a little bit. If you're the first one there, excellent, fine, you're not disturbing anyone. But by the time the 5th and 6th person come, the 8th and 9th, and they're doing the same thing, they all decide to turn the volume up louder because their music is the one that should be the most dominant. No one's hearing anything. So your definition of peace and your moment of peace has been destroyed. And so it's the same way as when you realize, hey, this was something that was working for me, or this was the best time in my life, but I didn't realize it because I was worried about, well, what can happen, not living in the present. So with that comes, what takes us back to the question, do we ever really appreciate something while we have it? And these things that we value, what would we do with them if we actually have them? And the biggest question that you can ask yourself is, do you already have it and you're just missing it because you're following that basic human instinct of wanting to be better, wanting to be more? So with that, I'm going to leave those questions there. Comment if you want to. Think about these things, because this is your life. This is not, there's no do-over. So your time here is important. And I think that next video will be something similar to this. It depends on the conversations I have in the next few days. But I thank you if you're listening. I thank you for checking me out on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel there. I'll put the link in the description on this page. And if you have anything that you'd like me to discuss or analyze, or questions that you have for me, feel free to ask. And I'll do my best to get to it in a timely fashion. Thank you. Have a good night and do your best.
This has been a Gilbert King Elisa production.